Also, there are a few mitzvot, important mitzvot that are done throughout Purim. Besides reading the Megillah and having a feast on Thursday, there are another two very important mitzvot. One is sending gifts to each other. So this is a great way to make up if you had a disagreement with somebody or a fight. Oh, this is the best time. Like you have an excuse just to show up at the person's door and say, "Here's the gift for you," because it's Purim. You know, it's like you don't disagree, and also to reinforce the relationships that you already have. So we are doing a small campaign here in Bejuro. We are getting gifts for rabbis. Some of you know, some of you don't know Rabbi Farhi, who is the rabbi of the shul. Rabbi Uri Nahum, who ran our Power Up Thursday program for years, and now he's very involved in our community. And Rabbi Zitron, who is teaching the girls class and also is very, very involved in our community. So we are raising a few funds to get gifts for these people to show our appreciation. And also there's another mitzvah of Purim is Matanat Levyonim, to give support poor people on that day, so to make sure that they have a meal, but also just to help them out. So we do have a few people in our community, unfortunately, that are struggling financially, and if you want to contribute to that as well, it's a great opportunity. We're going to be distributing those funds on Purim. So I'm going to leave 2 cups somewhere here, and I'm going to write on them one gifts for the rabbis, and another one is gifts for the poor people. So you could put whatever you want towards those 2 causes. So enjoy, Rabbi G. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Guys, don't forget the feedback forms. We posted them from last week, so we get your opinion.
Good evening, everyone. I had a lot of fun last week. I hope you guys did too. I was thinking about what to talk about today. Some discussions with the members of your community. So, we should actually talk a little bit about Purim. So I have some really, really cool ideas that I want to share with you about the holiday. Some of them are very philosophical, some a little mystical. I'm not a big mystical person, but I heard some ideas that blew me away. I loved it, so I'm going to actually share them. First, let's start with the practical. The Megillah, the reading of the Megillah, as the Rabbi said, the reading of the Megillah is probably the most important mitzvah, technically speaking, of the holiday. Now, why? Right? Why is reading the Megillah so important? Because the reading of the Megillah actually teaches us incredibly valuable lessons on how to interact with our Creator, and how to understand the nature of the world we live in and how we're supposed to act. Okay? So my son, my oldest, Tzvi, is 15. He learned how to read the Megillah in the past few months. Since I got married, I'm married, so this summer is going to be 17 years. Thank you very much. Hashem, my wife is long-suffering. When we first got married, my wife right away said, I would love if you could learn how to read the Megillah. Because sometimes it's very annoying, sometimes, especially when you have a baby, to have to go to the synagogue and you hope the baby's quiet because you need to hear every word of the Megillah. And then sometimes, there's noisemakers and a lot of sound and a lot of drunken Russians. And that's all great and fun, but when you're a mother with a little baby, it can be very inconvenient and difficult, and you're tired, you just want to have a reading and be able to go to sleep, right? So she's been asking me for 17 years to learn how to read. I keep telling her, yes, next year in Jerusalem. It hasn't, to the point where at something like 10 years ago, she said to me, if you learn to read the Megillah, right, we'll just buy a Megillah. We'll just own our own Megillah. Right, and that's at least $1,000, maybe more if you want to get a nice one. So I failed in that endeavor. But my 15-year-old son did it in 4 months, and that's why I hate him a little. So he's awesome. He learned how to read, and last week and a half ago, we took him to the Judaica store, and he picked out a Megillah, and we bought him a Megillah. We spent way more money than we could possibly afford. But a promise is a promise, and he gets it instead of me. But now he's in Megillah, and so I watch him, as he's practicing to read it. He's going to be reading for the Jewish Center in Brighton Beach reading, right? So they hired him to do the Megillah reading there. And he's also going to read in my house for just my wife and some other members of the community who want a quiet reading. Right? So I'm watching him practice his reading, and he unrolls the scroll, and it's like, there's a specific way to do it where you unfold it in a certain way. And as he's practicing, you have to know the laws. There's certain halachot, laws in reading the Megillah. And the laws seem sometimes a little bit strange, right? First of all, you have to hear every single word of the Megillah. If you don't hear words of the Megillah, you didn't fulfill your obligation, right? Secondly, you have to read them in the correct order. If you hear every word, but the order was messed up, like you said a word, you skipped by accident, you went back, you said the one you missed, and then you went back to where you made the mistake and continued. Nope, no good. It has to be in the correct order. Why? Why is it so specific, so exacting, that's this specific way? And what the halachot are teaching us is an extremely foundational principle in how to understand the entire holiday of Purim itself, and by extension, all the way up until today, how we're supposed to live our lives, Jewishly speaking. Why? Why is the holiday of Purim so pivotal, and the reading of the Megillah so instructional?
You're not going crazy.
Okay. Okay. Why is the reading of the Megillah so foundational and for the holiday and so important to understand all the way up until today? So what's the difference between the Purim holiday and the Megillah specifically, the Megillah, and all the other holidays and all the other books of the Tanakh, the Hebrew scriptures? Everyone knows the word Tanakh, right? Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, right? The 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. This is called the Hebrew Bible, right? What's unique about the scroll of Esther and the holiday of Purim? Right, very good. Right, we know that Hashem's name is not mentioned anywhere in the Megillah, which would seem strange for a book of the Bible to not mention God's name. It's mentioned very often. Every other book, it's like every third word, it's God's name. One way or another. It's God's name comes up all the time. All of a sudden you come to the Megillah, it's not mentioned at all. Not once. Why? Why is God's name not mentioned in the Megillah?
It's hidden.
That's true. It's hidden, right? The rabbis say, whenever it says King Achashverosh, it means King Achashverosh. Whenever it says HaMelech, the king, without saying Achashverosh's name, the rabbis say, it's referring to King Achashverosh, but it's also possibly hinting to the King of Kings, Hashem. Okay, true. God's name is hidden, but fine. So all you're doing is just rephrasing the question. Why is His name hidden? Why in this book of the Bible is His name not mentioned explicitly? Why is it only perhaps hidden? Yes, I saw a hand. Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyone have an idea? Why do we have this in the Megillah? Nothing pops to your head right now? Okay, I'll help you out. So the rabbis teach us because the holiday of Purim was a transition stage. All of Jewish history before the holiday of Purim was one way, and then Purim comes and everything changed, and it changed radically. There was a massive paradigm shift in the Jewish world and in our understanding of how we relate to God and how we act in the world. Right? It was a complete shift. Right? So what happened? Always a shift.
Well, there's no open miracles, right?
Good.
Everything is hidden, I guess.
Right. So you're on the right track. There were open miracles before. We know that the rabbis and the Talmud say that when the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, the first temple stood, there were 10 open miracles. You could look throughout the temple every day you could come, 10 miracles. You couldn't be an atheist back then, right? You couldn't, because you would just walk in and go, oh, like it's always, constantly. Plus all the holidays, one miracle after another miracle after another miracle, constant, all the time. There were prophets that were around us that could talk to us and tell us what God's actually saying. Okay, so what happened? So the rabbis explain. The transition which happened after the destruction of the first temple, which is where, right, in between the destruction of the first temple and the building of the second temple, that's where the Purim story takes place, in the 70 years that are in between. Right, so what happened at that time period that everything shifted? So the rabbis in the Talmud, they say, the rabbis looked at when the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, right? King Nebuchadnezzar, right, destroys the Beit HaMikdash, and the rabbis sit around and they go, including the last of the prophets, right? So these are the greatest rabbis and the last prophets. They're all sitting around and they're all going, what was the number one cause of our downfall for the past 1,000 years? Right? If they had to pick like a couple of points that were giving us the hardest time, what do you think was the number one thing that was giving us the hardest time? One or two. There's two. They wound up discussing two. So one or two would be fine. Anyone?
Lashon Hara and idol worship?
So Lashon Hara was actually something that they began to talk about more by the second temple. Not that they didn't do by the first temple, but it wasn't a pivotal idea. Idol worship. Good. Number one, you had idol worship. Right? So what did the rabbis do? They got together and they decided to pray to Hashem to remove the desire to worship idols from our hearts. Actually, can you imagine? The rabbis had that kind of power? That's pretty crazy. They said, Hashem, idol worship is too hard. We can't deal with it. We've been struggling and failing for legitimately 1,000 years. Let's get rid of idol worship. And as the Talmud says, when they made this prayer, a lion of fire came out of the place of where the Holy of Holies was. I mean, it still is, but where the ark used to be, because the temple was destroyed. A lion of fire comes out. It's a very interesting Talmud. So there's a lot of deep ideas you can get out of it. For now, we'll keep it relatively simple. What happened was, as soon as the rabbi said no more idol worship, God said, no problem, if that's what you want. But to keep it balanced, you're also going to lose prophecy, open miracles, clear vision of God in the world has to go with the idol worship. Why? Because the two are in balance. You could worship God, or you can worship idols. And they're equally powerful, to your vision, to your desires. By the way, it's very, very important to understand. The Jews never said that there's no God, there's just the idol. That never happened. Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah the prophet, famously stated, Jews, how long are you going to sit on the fence? You have to get off one or the other. Either just go to the idols or just go to God. Right? Because that's what the Jews did. They would go to the temple, offer sacrifices, and then they would come home and offer sacrifices again to the idols. Right? Maybe if we have some time, we'll discuss what is this idol worship? What does it really represent? For now, we'll just keep it simple. You get the idea. Worship idols? Bad. Torah's against it. It's the number one sin in the Torah, right? It's the one that keeps coming up again and again. The number one we're warned about the most. Right? Okay. So, if the idol worship is going to go away, but we still have prophets and open miracles, there's not going to be any struggle to serve God. Because there's not going to be an alternative. It's just obvious. Everyone's going to be 100% religious with no challenges, no alternatives. It's just going to be, that's not the point of existence. The point of existence is to struggle and fight. So God says, fine, if I'm going to lower the power of the dark side, so to speak, I'm also going to have to equivalently lower the power of the light side, so you still maintain a balance of free will. That transition happened during this time period. Right? The temple was destroyed. The rabbi said, please get rid of idol worship. Hashem said, no problem. The very next story was Purim. Purim is the transition for us to live in a world where we see God clearly and open miracles and prophets on every street corner. Literally every street corner, right? Because the Talmud says that there were over 1 million prophets lived during this 1,000-year time period. That's 1,000 prophets a year. Right? That's a lot of prophets. We only know about 48 men and 7 women that are written in the Tanakh that told us stuff to happen for the future. But there were over 1 million more of them. If you lost your keys, you knock next door on the prophet, Rivki, your friend Rivki, she's a prophet. Rivki, and she comes out, I knew you were coming. Yes, rubbing it in. So you're like, can you tell me where I lost my keys? And she's like, hold on. So you lost your keys behind your couch on the left side, it's underneath a pillow, and you're like, oh, thanks a lot, Rivki. And then she says, but do you know why you lost your keys? And then she tells you it's because you have this problem and that issue, and that's why Hashem made you lose your keys, so you would come to me, and now I can tell you what your issues are so you can work on. So which is why, nobody wants to go to the prophet, because nobody wants to be told why they have their problems, right? We don't have that anymore. That's gone. No more instant, clear communication. Now it's a lot harder. So how are we supposed to... People ask, how do we see God? How can we see God in our lives if we don't have the open miracles and we don't have the prophecies and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's what we learned from the Megillah. I'm going to tell you about that in a second, but before we do that, what was the second thing the rabbi said was the biggest tripping point for the Jews during this 1,000 years? Was sexual immorality. They said sexual immorality. In fact, the rabbis in the Talmud actually say that the only reason Jews even worshiped idols is because really they wanted forbidden sex. And since idols are all about that, the idols are like, yeah, sure, go for it, it's all good. And they're like, okay, I love idols. And the rabbi said that was the root even of idol worship was that. So what the rabbis do, they said, maybe we should pray to get rid of the desire for sex. And they said, you know what, that seems extreme, let's test it. So they did it for like, I think 3 days. They're like 3 days of no desire for sexuality, and then chickens stopped laying eggs, people stopped, doing it. Because if there's no desire for it, why would you ever do it? It's not like a particularly attractive thing when you look at it from the outside with no desires. Right? It's gross, it's messy, there's a lot of drama involved, right? Like, why would you? It's like I don't know, this is weird. All of a sudden the desire comes back in, like, oh my goodness, how could I have lived without this? You know what? You get the idea. So they did not permanently get rid of that desire. Like, we should keep that one. Alright, back to the Megillah. So, anybody happen to know off the top of their head how long the story that's in the Megillah, how long does that take place over? About a decade. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's a long story. It doesn't take place, when you read it, you think it takes place over maybe a few months. Right, Queen Vashti gets killed because of the party, and she didn't dance in front of the king's, or go in front of the king's people, and then gets Esther the new queen, and then she, and then the assassination attempt, and then Haman gets up to cause all these problems, and then the king can't sleep, and then this whole the party with the queen, all this kind of stuff. It seems to take place maybe a year, like it seems to be pretty quick. It's it's something like a decade, 11 years, 7 years, something like that. It's a long time. It's a whole story. Now imagine we lived there at the time of the story, right? The king throws a party. Okay, we come to the party. We don't want to insult the king. He makes glad kosher food, right? The glad kosher caterers in Shushan are serving the king's meal, so the Jews would come and eat. And then a while later, the Jews find out, oh man, the king killed his queen. That's weird. Why would he do that? And then a little while later, they hear, oh man, people are going around the whole kingdom finding wives, and like each thing takes a while. Weeks or months or even years pass between each moment of the Megillah. So if we lived through it ourselves, who would connect the dots? Who would see the things that are related to each other? Who would see that there's a story happening here? You wouldn't. There's no prophet to tell us. There's rabbis telling us things, yeah, but whoever listens to rabbis, right? We're not going to make the connections. So along comes Esther and Mordechai at the end of the story of Purim, and they say we have to write this scroll, and they create all the laws of how to read it. You can only see, this is what they're telling us. It's a lesson that is till today, because we still live in that way of being. Nothing has changed since the story of Purim. It transitioned, and we're still in that state that came, the post-destruction of the temple state. We're still there. So the lessons all apply to us right now. If you want to see God in your life, this is what you have to do. Number one, you got to hear every word. You can't miss any of the story. You got to see everything. That means you got to take a step back and look over weeks, months, and years, maybe even decades. See the whole story of your life. Who did I speak to? How did I get there? What are all the things that needed to happen in exactly the right order for me to get to where I am now? And it has to be in order. Don't miss everything. Put it in context. Right? Pay attention. What's the connections? Look at the story of the Megillah. It's just one coincidence after another. It just so happens. Who's the girl that they decided to make? I mean, think about it. How many girls do you think King Achashverosh interviewed to see who would be his wife? Probably. I would imagine it was thousands, right? It seems to go on for months, right? He's got a new girl, at least one per night, maybe more than one, right? He's checking out all these girls to see who's going to be the new queen. And it happens to be that just the one that he's like, wow, she's the best, I want her, is the one girl who is Jewish. And it just so happens that Mordechai, her uncle, right, just so happens that he overheard a plot to kill the king, that he was in a perfect position to save the king's life, and it just so happens that the king, uniquely, never happened before, forgot to reward Mordechai for saving his life. And it just so happens that the king couldn't sleep on the very nights that Haman wanted to come and have Mordechai hanged. On that night the king couldn't sleep, and on that night they were reading to him the chronicles of the kingship, and he saw, oh, I never rewarded Mordechai, maybe that's why I can't sleep. Because subconsciously I'm scared because the person who saved my life wasn't rewarded. Maybe there's other plots on my life, but people are not saving me because the guy who did save me, I didn't reward him. And at just that moment, Haman walked in. So when you play out all the coincidences in a row, at what point you start to go, wait a second. This seems kind of funny. Is there someone in charge behind the scenes? It's the same thing in your life. Exactly the same thing in your life. I'll tell you a quick story for myself. So I told you guys that I competed in the Maccabi Games, right? And did I tell you how I got onto the team? No? So I flew from New York to Chicago to compete for tryouts. And by the way, I didn't want to go to Israel. I was completely uninterested in going to Israel. I had zero Jewish pride. I had zero care for Israel as a state. I was like, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. The only reason I went is because I was told that if you go to Israel, Israeli girls are very friendly. I'm putting it in nicer terms than I was told because I'm in a synagogue and it's being recorded. But that was the way, I was a 19-year-old, male, and I went, oh, okay, this is worth my investment. So I flew to Chicago and I competed for the tournament. And now, who am I in my weight, because it's my weight divisions. I was fighting in the under 154 pound weight division. I was 153 pounds, so I was like right at the top of my weight division. And one of the guys who I was fighting against, I still remember him to this day. He was really good. He was amazing. He was fast. He was sharp. He had power. And I'm watching him dismantle one person after another, and I'm like, ugh, this guy's good. Like, I don't think I could beat him. I beat the guys to get to this. So it was the top two guys were me and this guy. I won my 2-3 matches before. He won his 2-3 matches before. We watched each other fighting because, you want to see what the guy does. And I was terrified. I'm like, how am I going to beat this guy? There's no way. He's so much faster than me. His techniques are so much crisper. I was pretty good, I had a black belt. I wasn't bad, but this guy was better. Clearly. So the fight starts, and I fought maybe one of the most magnificent fights I ever fought in my life. And it was just barely good enough to have equal score with him. And we're finally at the point where it was tied, 2 points to 2 points. And whoever gets the next good solid punch or kick is going to get the third point, win the match, and go to Israel. And the other one goes home and cries. Well, maybe that's just me. So, you have to understand, anyone here ever done any fighting sports? A couple of you guys? So, if you've ever sparred or actually fought in a competition, you may tell people that what usually happens is you are complete. There are few things that concentrate your mind more than someone trying to punch you or kick you in the face, right? It's wonderfully good for your concentration, right? This is just there. I am completely zeroed in. In all the years, I competed all around the United States for a decade, right? From the time I was, 10 years old, I was competing. Never, ever heard a word from outside of the ring. Never, not once. It never happened. Just there. I don't hear a thing. Once, this very night, this very competition, as I'm facing off with this guy, and I'm bleeding, I'm hurt, I'm bruised up, and he's also beaten up, and all of a sudden I hear, as if from the heavens, I hear a voice, and it says to me, sweep the leg. Right? It means like kick his feet to lose his balance. And my brain in a split second went, that's a great idea. And I swept his leg, he lost balance, got a solid punch. I can't extend all the way, or I'll twist my jacket. Extended all the way, got a good solid punch into the ribs. Point for me, and I'm like, this is the way karate works, right? That's how you know who's the best martial artist, is whoever sounds the most constipated when they're fighting. That's why Bruce Lee was the best. Just watch his movies. So anyway, I win, right? Now, I turn around to my friends who were watching, and I come up to them like, wow, guys, thanks so much for yelling that out, right? And they're all standing there like this, like they've seen a ghost. And I'm looking at them like, what's the matter? And they said, we didn't say anything. It was his teammates telling him what to do. And at that time, I was like, what a coincidence. How strange and unlikely a fortunate set of events that has no meaning whatsoever. I mean, I was an atheist. So that's just the way I would think at the time. It was only later, months later, after I was in Israel, fought in the Maccabi, saw some classes, began to open up, and then thought back. And it was like, it was so many things that had to happen exactly right, which were not likely things to happen. And I was like, are they all coincidences? Maybe. And maybe not. That's actually not something you can prove one way or the other. You have to make a choice. You have to decide, is this a coincidence or is this meaningful? And that is exactly how we live our lives since the Purim story. God never flashes the sky, lights, angels. It doesn't happen. It will not happen. There's no more splitting seas. You know what there is instead? There's Stalin having a stroke on Purim when he was about to send all the Jews in Russia to Siberia to die. And days before the plan was supposed to go through, on Purim, he had a stroke and died a couple of days later. Coincidence? Maybe. So when we look at our own lives, this is our struggle. To look objectively, in context, bird's eye view, put the things together, and then decide. Is God speaking to me? And I think that if we open our hearts and our minds to that possibility, which not many people can from the outside world, you have to first imagine it's even possible. But if we open up to that possibility and then we look for it, we're not necessarily fooling ourselves. We'll see it. We'll see when it happens. My wife and I were living in Jerusalem. Actually, we're living in a suburb of Jerusalem called Beitar Illit, technically. So we're living just outside of Jerusalem, and we had no money. I mean, I was earning $350 a month learning Torah in Kollel, and that was what our rent was. Our rent was $350 a month. So like the money went to rent, but we ran out of wedding money pretty quickly, and it was very, very, like, we had nothing. We had absolutely nothing. There was no buying clothes, there was no extras of the tiniest sort. And my mom would fly us in to America every Passover. We had a couple of weeks. I was off from yeshiva, and my mom would credit card, fly us in, and then she would spend the whole year paying off the credit card so she could do it again the next year. Because she wanted to see, my mom didn't have money. She did it all on the card. And just so that she could see me, my wife, and then my son, and then my second son. So one year my wife says, how are we going to pay our bills? Like, we have no money. I said, look, I don't know how we're going to pay our bills, but I do know that this is what Hashem wants me to do right now. This is my purpose in life, is to be learning in yeshiva, and if that's what He wants me to do, He has to provide. So my wife was like, okay. My mom flew us out of the country. So the way we paid our bills is we borrowed. We went to a gamach, a free loan society. We borrowed, I don't remember how much, a few thousand shekels. I don't know what the money was at the time. We borrowed the money. We paid our rent. We paid our bills. We paid whatever we had to pay. We had nothing left. We flew to America with a few thousand shekels debt that we would have to pay after we came back from America. Great. We have a nice time. We're on the plane, on the way back to Israel. And my wife is like, how are we going to pay these bills? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, let's just pray. You know, we're doing the right thing. This is what God wants from us. It'll work out. And my wife is like, nervous wreck, whatever, okay. You know, one of us has to be nervous about it. We get back, we land, take the bus, we get back to our hometown, we come back to our apartment, we check the mail. What's in the mail? There's a check. Who's the check from? There's an organization in Israel that likes to give money to kollel families where the husband learns Torah all day, to help with holiday expenses. But they don't always have money to give to every family, so it's not like every family in all of Israel is getting a check every single holiday. It happened to be that the way that they figured it out, we got a check that time. I'm like, look, Chanie, we got a check. She's like, oh, that's great. How much is the check for? I said, I don't know, here, take, and I was busy with the baby. She opens up the envelope, she takes out the check, she looks at the check, and she goes, like this. I said, what's the matter? She goes, look at the number. It was within less than 1% the number we owed to the Free Loan Society. It was almost exactly the amount that we owed. It was the check covered, and I looked at her and I went, no, yeah. And she's like, shut up. She's like, yeah, God loves us, blah, blah, blah. You know? So, if you're an outsider, if you're not me, if you're not my wife, and you look at this story, you could easily go, that just could have been coincidence. Yeah, it could have been. But I'm the one who's looking at my own life, and I'm the one who has to take all the different factors into account, and I'm the one who has to decide, is this a coincidence, or is this God talking to me? Направда.
Is that coincidence too?
I don't know, you gotta figure it out for yourself. Okay. Any questions on that idea? I'm going to transition to a different idea. So that idea I'm done with. Does anybody have any questions on that one? All right, great. So let's switch gears. Who is our enemy in the Purim story? Amalek, right? That's the rabbis teach us. Even though Amalek, the word Amalek doesn't appear in the Megillah, in the scroll, the rabbis teach us that Haman was from the tribe of Amalek, because he's called Haman Ha'agagi, Haman the Agagite. Sounds like he's got a disease, right? Agagite, right? But that means because Agag was the king of Amalek in the time of Shmuel, in the book of Shmuel. Okay, so Haman was Amalek. And Amalek is the ultimate enemy of the Jewish people. The source of all anti-Semitism is the nation of Amalek. So Purim is the battle between the Jews and our ultimate enemies. Cool. Battle between light and dark, good and evil. I mean, it's like so dramatic. Awesome. So let's understand for a second. What does Amalek represent? What is the power of Amalek? So where do we see Amalek in the Torah and in involvement with the Jewish people? Yes.
When the Jews were coming out of Egypt and Amalek attacked us, I think everyone, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think some of them turned into sheep or something.
No, that was later. That was the story of Shmuel and the king Agag, yeah.
That means they killed everyone and I think they saved the baby?
No, that was the later story,
okay.
yeah. You're confusing some of the wars, but we've had a few of them. It's like when people ask me about the Gulf War, I say, which one? So the story, I'll give you a hand in a second. So the story over there is, the Jewish people leave Egypt. We're entering into the desert after we just had 10 plagues, splitting of the sea, and Egypt was destroyed, and the whole world was absolutely terrified of the Jewish people. Terrified. And only one nation dared to bother us, and it was Amalek. And they came, and they attacked us, and they attacked like the weak people, the ones at the edge, but they were almost completely wiped out. They were terribly defeated in this attack. You had a point there?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So what does the pasuk, what does the verse in the Torah say? That Amalek, you have to remember, when we remember Amalek, in Sefer Dvarim, when we say, remember what Amalek did to you, the pasuk over there says, when Amalek attacked you, v'karta baderech, when they happened upon you on the way, right? When they happened upon you. What does the word happened mean? What does that imply? They happened upon you. Does it imply purposeful or accidental? Accidental. They happened upon you. You know, you were going this way, and Amalek was going that way, and they're like, what, Jews? You know, like, it was just some random, but was it actually random? Not at all. It was a clearly planned attack. They knew exactly where we were, they knew exactly what they were doing, and they came to attack us. So why would the Torah say, when they happened upon you? Weird. We see a reflection of that in the Megillah. Is there any place that it seems a little odd that chance or circumstance or happening is involved in the story of the Megillah?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Is there anywhere in the story of the Megillah, Megillat Esther, that chance or randomness or happenstance appears in the story and it doesn't really make sense? Like, why would that be there? There's no reason for randomness to be in the story. Is there such a thing in the Megillah as well? Not dice, but what did Haman do when he was deciding which day to kill the Jews? He did a raffle. And a raffle is called, in Persian, it's called a pur. And that's where the holiday Purim comes from. This is the raffle, or you know, he put in the lots, like lots, raffle, right? Why? Why is he just like, why didn't he just pick, I'm going to kill them on my birthday, yay me, you know, like, or my anniversary, all right, you know, what better way to celebrate your anniversary than murdering the entire people, this is amazing. No, they just pick it randomly. Why did Haman do that? Because Haman understood that the power of his people is the power of randomness. What does that mean? Well, what do you mean the power of randomness? What does it mean when yeah?
So maybe it's like leaving it up to God, sort of?
No. The opposite. Because God doesn't do things randomly. God does everything purposefully. So when you're saying things are random, you're saying there is no God.
But aren't we saying that within what we think is random, it's actually something that has...
Yeah, that's true on a deeper philosophical level. But when we use words like random or happenstance or chance, what we mean is there was no purpose, there was no meaning, it just happened. When somebody says to you, wrong place, wrong time, what they're saying is that random occurrences cause this bad thing to happen to you. Sorry, life sucks, and then you die, right? Right? So the core philosophy of Amalek is that nothing matters. Everything is random. Everything is chance and happenstance. Nothing happens for a reason. Nothing has any purpose or meaning to it. That's their core philosophy. Which is why Haman is so interested in doing something right. He's trying to access, if you could imagine, he's trying to access the spiritual energy of meaninglessness and chance. Right? Which is pretty interesting. Right? It's a pretty sophisticated idea. Now, is there any modern manifestation of this idea that things are meaningless and random and purposeless? Yeah. It's called atheism. That is actually the fundamental underpinnings, right, of atheism. I'm not saying that every atheist is a Malek. I'm not saying that, right? In fact, most atheists, we had, yeah, it's a funny story. We had, a few years ago, I was at a rage trip in Israel, and my very good friend, Rabbi Gabriel Friedman, Rav Gab. How many of you guys know Rav Gab? Right? He's awesome. So he's teaching a class. He's a good friend of mine. He's teaching a class, and one of the students, kind of randomly, no pun intended, turns to him and says, Rabbi, I'm an atheist. And he had never said that to me. I don't know why he just decided to just throw it out at Rav Gav. And Rav Gav was like, really? An atheist? I never get to see you guys. And he literally jumped up on the table, like sitting down, and he's like, so tell me, did you read Immanuel Kant and his critique of pure reason? No. Oh, well, did you read Friedrich Nietzsche and his, I forget which book he mentioned, one of his books on morality and ethics? And he went, no. Well, did you read Baruch Spinoza, the famous Jewish philosopher from Amsterdam? No. He's like, oh, I thought you said you were an atheist. You're not an atheist. You're just ignorant. And I'm sitting in the back going, yes, yes. Okay. What happened?
No, that's something my father always says. Follow truth.
So, I think that most people call themselves atheists. They're not atheists because they thought about it, read about it, dug deep into the intellect and soul, or which they don't believe in, defines, like what is the truth. They just that's just what the people they know and they trust, they grew up that way and whatever it is. Okay? Same thing with, perhaps that's the same with some people who are religious also. They don't dig into it, it's just the way it grew up. Right? So there's people on that kind on both sides. But so I'm not talking about atheist people. I'm talking about the philosophy of atheism. Okay, let's actually, instead of saying atheist, let's put atheism. The philosophy of atheism is that, obviously, there is no God. Atheism, no God. That's the literal meaning of the word atheism. There is no God. But what does that mean? That means there's no purpose to the universe. That means that there's no... We were not created by a purposeful creator with a point, mission, goal, or purpose in mind. That's what atheism says. And therefore, the stuff that happens to us in our lives doesn't mean anything. It's just random events. Stuff happens and you have to deal with it. This is why the existentialist philosophers and then later the absurdist philosophers, they look at the world as there's nothing here. The famous existentialist and then absurdist philosopher Albert Camus, in his book, I think it's called The Death of Sisyphus, I think that's the name of the book, he says, there's only one real philosophical question. Am I going to kill myself right now? That's the only real philosophical question. And everything else is just figuring out how to live the life I've decided to live right now. Right? That's coming from a core that nothing matters, nothing means anything. And now I have to figure out how do I live in a life. And he writes somewhere else, he goes, mankind looks to the heavens for meaning and purpose, and the heavens look down back at him with a vast empty nothing. Right? You read this guy, you're like, oh my God, I read it for 3 pages, I want to slit my own wrists. It's like, oh, he's so dark, very French. Okay, anyway. French are really good at being very dramatically dark. That and waving white flags. That's just they're really good at both of those things. All right. Anyway, so what is the real struggle of Purim? And again, I'm connecting this to what I said in the earlier discussion. Purim is a transitional holiday, which means if this is the struggle of Purim, it's still our struggle today. It hasn't left us. It's front and center. Do we decide, because again, as I said before, it's a decision. Do we decide that this is a world of purpose and meaning and value, and there are goals, and I have to try to strive to reach for something? Or do I instead decide that this is a life of meaninglessness and purposelessness, and I'm going to just have to figure out how to pass my time before I die in the least painful way? Amen. As my Rosh Yeshiva of Noah Weinberg used to say all the time, he says, we all commit suicide. Just most of us do it on the installment plan. 5 minutes here, wasting time. 5 minutes there, wasting time. Read a book that's unnecessary, watch a show we don't need, hang out with people and talk about things that are meaningless. Each of those is a few minutes of our life, which is our life that we've just thrown down the toilet. So we kill ourselves a little bit at a time. Oh, that was darker than I intended. All right. But yay, Purim! Okay, good. Okay, so that's the second major concept I wanted to share with you. Any questions or comments on that idea? Man, you guys are easy. All right. All right. Let me share with you the next one. Can you guys see in the bottom over here? No, you guys can't see the back. It's fine. I'm just going to erase the top part. Is there an eraser? Oh, so sophisticated. Thank you. All right. I want to, for a change of pace, I want to share with you, I saw just recently, and then I looked it up to see if it was accurate, and it is, a really, really cool kind of mystical, Kabbalistic kind of idea in the combining the Torah with the Megillah. If you go to the first word of the Torah, right, there you go. Okay, so you go to the first word of the Torah, right, in the beginning. If you start with this first aleph, so this first aleph is the very first aleph of the Torah. Okay? Cool. Does anybody know how many letters there are in the Megillah? I don't know why you would know. There are 12,196 letters in the Megillat Esther. I looked it up, it's true. Because somebody told me this idea, I'm like, what, really? And then I'm like, let me do research, and I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, that's correct. Okay. So, if you go from the Aleph of Bereshit, if you skip exactly 12,196 letters later, there is a Samech. If you skip another 12,196 letters later, there is a Taf. If you skip another 12,196 letters later, there is a, you knew it, Resh. The name Esther is spelled, hidden as a secret code in the Torah, from the first Aleph at the skip that's exactly the number of letters of the Megillah. Now, if this was on its own, and you're not like into this Torah code stuff, you might go, really, Rabbi? Is that what we're going with? Is that how far we've come down? But there's another one. But wait.
There's more.
There's more. The rabbis in the Talmud, they ask, is there a hint in the Torah to Mordechai? And the rabbis say yes. There is a verse in the Torah which says, Mor Deror. It's talking about the incense, the incense spices. Later in the Torah, it says, and it sounds like linguistically it's connected to Mordechai. I don't know Hebrew that well, but the rabbis in the Talmud, 1,800 years ago, they say, in this verse of the Torah is hinted Mordechai. Okay. If you go from the Mem of Mor Dror, and you go 12,196 letters later, okay, you get the idea. It spells out Mordechai's name. Same exact pattern, happening twice. And this one is even from the specific letter the rabbis say. Here's the hints to Mordechai. Did the rabbis know that there was some weird letter skip? I can imagine probably not. That's kind of a weird thing. Maybe some unbelievable super genius rabbi that can do Torah codes in his head, right? But that's pretty crazy. And so I saw this and I was like, ooh, tingles. So again, coincidence? Maybe. This one, you can tell this one to your parents and be like, hey, you want to hear something cool? You might actually, I think I'm going to share this next on Purim with drunk people. And I'm going to see if there's a difference in the reaction between people who are drunk and people who are sober. And then I'm going to wait for the Rage Amsterdam trip. And I think you know where the rest of that story is going. Alright. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. There is a very famous part of the Megillah that I was actually specifically asked to talk about. So I want to bring it up for you to hear about it. If you did Aish HaTorah's Discovery Seminar, you may remember this, but it's been a while, so you may not remember the details. I'm just going to give you the punchline at the end. There's a very, very cool part of the Megillah. If you take a look in the Megillah, there's one part that it has, right, the sons of Haman.
It looks like a tree.
I have never heard that it looked like a tree. I never heard that one. It says ve'et and, blah, blah. I'm spelling blah in Hebrew. Blah, blah. right? And this guy, and that guy, and this guy, and that guy, right? It's the 10 sons. It looks like a tree. I have to show you that later. I'd be interested to see that. Anyway, it goes to the 10 sons of Haman. What happens to the 10 sons of Haman? What happens at this point of the story? When the 10 sons are mentioned, and this son, and that son, and this son, and that son, they're not hanged. What happens to them?
Arrested?
Nope. Arrested. Yeah, maybe New York arrested. No one knows? Okay, we need a Megillah. Is there a Chumash art scroll? Or even not art scroll? I can read Hebrew. We call it the art scroll, we call it Yeshiva Smart Scroll. It's a really, really cool idea also.
I don't know what page it's on.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It happens to be all the way in the back. The Megillot, ooh, this is fresh and shiny, look at this. Oh, you guys don't joke around up here. Gorski show. You're like, we're not buying no cheap chumashim. We're getting the good stuff. Man, I gotta become Sfari. I'll get nice chumashim and rice on Pesach. Okay. Haftorahs and Megillas. There we go, 5 Megillas. So we get to, here's the part. You see the sons with the space in between? So it says like this. I'm just going to go just before you see the sons' names. And it says, Mordechai was now preeminent in the royal palace. His fame was spreading throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordechai grew increasingly greater. Cool. And the Jews struck at all their enemies with the sword. Great. How are they striking their enemies? With a sword. What's a sword? It's like a knife, but bigger.
A metal
right.
stick.
What?
A metal stick.
Yeah. It's like a knife, but bigger. Yeah. And how does the sword work? You stick it in to them, and stuff comes out of them, and they die. That's generally how it works, right? Okay. So, and the Jews struck at all their enemies with the sword, slaughtering and annihilating. How do you say annihilating in Hebrew? Okay. Right? I don't know if I would have translated annihilating. All right. And they treated their enemies as they pleased. In Shushan, the capital, the Jews slew and annihilated 500 men. Awesome. Including, and then it goes through the 10 sons of Haman. So what happens to the 10 sons of Haman? They're sorted. They're sorted to death. The son of Haman, the son of Hamadasa, the Jews' enemy, but they did not lay their hands on the spoil. All right. So the 10 sons of Haman are dead. That same day, the number of those killed in Shushan, the capital, was reported to the king. Who's the king? Or God. Whenever it says just the king. Okay? So this might be, it could be that God's involved here in a hidden way. The king said to Queen Esther, the king, which king? Maybe both. In Shushan, the capital, the Jews have slain and annihilated 500 men as well as the 10 sons of Haman. Wow, what have they done in the other provinces? What do you want now? Anything you want. What is your petition? It shall be fulfilled. Anything you want, Esther. Anything you want, Esther, you can have it. Who's talking to her? Her husband, the king. Maybe also her father, the king. Both kings, perhaps. And what does she ask for? What does she ask for?
One day.
Kill them all again.
Kill them all again? What do you mean?
The sons of heaven.
How are you going to kill them again?
In the future, I guess.
So it says, that seems crazy. She says, if it pleases His Majesty, allow the Jews who are in Shushan to act tomorrow as they did today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. The rabbis immediately are like, who say what now? Why would you hang 10 dead men? So the rabbis come up with a few possible answers. They go, maybe to make fear in our enemies. They're dead already, but we're going to hang them anyway. Seems weird, but maybe. Or there's a rabbinic opinion that Haman had 10 other sons that are not even mentioned in the Megillah, because it doesn't make sense to kill 10 dead men. Must be that there were 10 that were stabbed, and there's going to be 10 that are hanged. Maybe he's got another 10 that are going to be stoned. Speaking of Amsterdam, right? So now, so 1948 comes along, and you have the famous Nuremberg trials, where Nazi criminals were on trial in Europe. And one of the most famous parts of the trial, there were 11 super famous Nazis on trial. One of them, Hermann Göring, committed suicide, and the other 10 were hanged. That year, as the Jewish year that followed, and Purim holiday came, I forget who it was, there was one rabbi who was reading through the Megillah as he was preparing for Purim, and then all of a sudden he gets to the part of the 10 sons of Haman being hanged on the gallows, and he went, "What? This is crazy. 10 future sons of Haman, of Amalek." Hitler was clearly Amalek, wanted to kill all the Jews. So the 10, are they sons? No. Disciples? Okay, maybe. Maybe it's a connection. Maybe there's a parallel. But wait a second. Haman had 10 sons who were hanged, right? But he also had a daughter. What did his daughter do to herself?
Suicide?
She committed suicide. Oh, it was Hermann Göring. Hermann Göring also committed suicide. Okay, but she's a girl, he's a guy. It's funny to think about these things. So when you read the writings of the Nazis, one of the things that comes up, a few different Nazis say it, is they're like, oh, Hermann Göring, yeah, he loved to wear women's underclothing underneath his uniform. He was into wearing women's underwear. He had a bra, panties, under his Nazi uniform.
Oh my god.
Right. So one Nazi who likes to dress secretly as a woman kills it. Rabbi, I don't know. Okay, why did Haman's daughter kill herself? Does anybody know why she killed herself? Anybody remember? Yeah?
Because when Mordechai was being walked by Haman, I think the mom told her to throw it because she thought Haman was on it.
Throw what?
I think it was feces.
Yeah.
Garbage.
It's a special pot. It's called the chamber pot.
Yeah.
That back in the day, they didn't have running toilets. You had a pot. You did your stuff in the pot, and then that's why the expression comes out. I'm so poor. I don't even have a pot to piss in. Right? That's where that expression comes from. People actually used to have pots. Right? You would do your stuff in the pot, and then you would go and dump it out. On somebody's head. So she's like on the roof. And then she looks down and she sees one guy dressed royally on a horse. And she's like, oh, that must be Dad. Because she just knew that Dad was going to the king to get, great stuff. And who's that guy pulling the horse? That dirty guy, but that must be Mordechai. That was Mordechai the Jew. And she's like waiting. And she dumps her freshly used, nice and hot, juicy chamber pot. You guys finished eating, right? Right on who she thought was Mordechai the Jew's head, but he looks up and it's her dad, and she's like, oh my god, I disgraced my dad, and she jumps to her death, right? So that's the story the rabbis tell, crazy story, right? Yeah? So, how did Hermann Göring commit suicide? Does anybody know?
I think with the pill was...
He had a suicide pill. And where was the pill hidden? It was hidden under the toilet.
But he had also like in his case or something.
They hid it in a case, but the case was hidden under the toilet. His pill, somebody came and helped him and smuggled in a suicide pill and hid it for him in the toilet. So Haman's daughter uses the toilet and then kills herself. Hermann Göring uses the toilet and then kills himself. Okay, seems a little bit, alright, okay.
Almost there.
But wait! There's more. This stuff is too much fun. Now you guys, you'll have to take a look afterwards for yourself that I'm going to show you. If you take a look at the 10 sons of Haman that are over here, for the past 2,400 years we have been writing these names down exactly the same. On my trip to Amsterdam, my last trip, in the Amsterdam Jewish Museum, they have Megillas that are 700, 800, 900 years old. Ancient, beautiful Megillas. And I showed to some of the guys, I was like, look at the Megillah. It's written exactly the way that all the Megillas are written today. 100% identical. No difference in the Megillas for at least 900 years. And our tradition is that it's even older. We have pieces of Megillah that are older. All the same, exactly the same. And in the 10 sons of Haman, there are, for some reason, there are a few letters that are written in their names too small. In the first name, Parshandata, that tough, you can't see it from here, but take a look on yourself later. That tough is too small. And down over here, right, in a Parmashta, there's a shin that's written too small. And on the bottom, Vaizata, there is a zayin that's too small. So those letters, Tav, Shin, Zayin. I don't know how to do a zayin like that. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So Tav, Shin, Zayin. How many of you know Hebrew? Right, what does that look like to you if you know Hebrew?
Gosh. Oh, like a number?
Does anybody know what year we're in?
5,000.
Yeah, how do you say it in Hebrew?
Tav, Shin.
Tav, Shin. Anyone else? Ayin. Is it Ayin Aleph or just Ayin? What year are we in?
577.
7-9. Samech is 60.
It's Tav, Shin, Ayin, Tet.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's how you write the Hebrew year. We're in the year Tav, Shin, Ayin, Tet. If this is a year, Tav, Shin, Zayin, that's the year. Tav, Shin, Zayin is the year that the 10 future sons of Haman were hanged.
That's great.
But wait,
There's one.
there's more. One of the names of Haman, sons, the letter is too big. At the last name, Vaizata, there is a very big Vav. What does Vav equal numerically? 6. Why is that important? Because this year, that's 400 plus 300 plus 80, 70? 70 plus 9. So 779. That's the year 779. But we're in the year 5779. Why do we have the 5 in there? Because generally, to write 5,000, you would have to write something like this. So on and so forth. Because that's the biggest number in Judaism. It's 400. There's no bigger number. So we just assume you know which millennia you live in. Right? Now. But the year, right, this is 707. The year 707, how many times does the year 707 appear? How many times does the year 707 appear? No. There's 0707, then there was 1707, 2707, 3707, 4707, and 5707. Which 707 is this one? It's the 6th. The 6th 707. Which millennia? Finally, this is all in the Megillah. You can also see this for yourself. And a lot of people are like, how, what, that's crazy. Or it's a coincidence. It's your choice. It's choice, always choice. The last part of the Purim story with the Nazis, which is particularly funny and fun, is that the last of the 10, hanging Nazis is always fun. The last... the ghost of Hitler is coming back. No! And he wouldn't be able to come into a synagogue, so it's fine. Don't worry, we're protected from the ghost of Hitler. Okay, so the last of the 10 Nazis who was hanged in these 10. There were more Nazis that were killed, but this was a specific group that was all together. The last of these 10 that was killed, his name was Julius Streicher. And you can look up on Google, there was a Newsweek article that came out which described what happened. He gets up, he says, Heil Hitler, now I go to God. And the very last thing he says before he dies is Purim, 1948. Just yells it out. Was it the time of Purim when he was hanged? No, it was the time of Sukkot. Half a year away. Why did he yell out Purim? One of two possible answers. Either he, as a Nazi, he understood Jewish holidays, and he was like, this is it. And he saw it himself. This is the Purim story again, and I'm one of the 10 sons of Haman. It's a possibility. I don't know. He's not around to ask. The other possibility is that he had no idea what he was doing, and that those words came into his mouth from somewhere else. Both of those answers are possible.
Could be Gilgal also.
Right, some sort of reincarnation. Yeah, totally possible. Question, I saw a hand.
What happened on Purim in 1948?
I don't know. Every year something interesting happens, but I don't remember specifically. Yes?
You mean Stalin then?
That was in 53. Yeah.
Quick question regarding the Haman's son.
Yeah.
So what was the actual answer with the 10 and the 10?
What do you mean?
When the first time they were killed by sword and then escalated?
What is the actual answer?
Yeah.
So there's a few answers the rabbis give. One is that they were the 10 dead guys were hanged to scare the enemies of the Jews.
Oh, what you said before. It's basically like
Those are the answers the rabbis bring. Or it was another 10 sons of Haman. But perhaps there's a deeper answer. Perhaps when she was saying, let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged tomorrow, she didn't mean tomorrow. She meant tomorrow, in the future. And she wasn't talking only to her husband, the king. She was talking to the King of Kings. It could be both. It's perfectly possible that she was talking to the king and she was talking to the king. Hang Haman's 10 dead sons for the reasons we said. And also, Hashem, the 10 future sons of Haman, the officers of Hitler, hang them too. Maybe. I can't prove any of this. None of this is provable. You have to look at it and weigh it out and go, is it enough to say it's not a coincidence? Nobody can do that for you. You have to make that choice yourself. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.